Hey everyone, this is Thyworm with a life drain Lich build for last Epoch, the low life Lich. If you are looking for last Epoch content, subscribe. I created a lot of stuff for that game to help you get the most out of it. Let's start with the build philosophy of the life drain Lich build. This Lich is a very versatile character that does well overall. It relies on necrotic damage, poison, damage over time and kiting, but generally speaking kills monsters pretty fast. You could make it around wave 200 in the arena, you could run monolith runs really smoothly and pretty fast, leveling is not an issue and the build is really fun to play. The life drain Lich is a low life build, which is a bit ironic maybe with it supposedly draining life. We are however not draining life but turning that into damage and ward generation. We can reach up to 12k ward rather easily, which provides a ton of protections. The low life Lich is a jack of all trades, a character with various tools for every situation. It's not the most beginner friendly build because of this, and you are using a wide variety of skills and it does take some time to exercise them all to get them right and imprint it in your muscle memory. But once you do, you're going to have an amazing time with this. Let's look at the passives. Generally speaking, you're looking for ward, intelligence and damage over time. As ward is our main source of defense, intelligence makes all our skills better and damage over time is the main damage type. With that in mind, let's start. We take 8 out of 8 forbidden knowledge for the intelligence. 8 out of 10 mania of mortality because of the ward generation on kill, which is really helpful. It's also great while leveling. And the 4 out of 4 unnatural preservation because ward retention is extremely important here. You need as much as you can get so you benefit from the ward generation the most. All other points are in Lich. I'm currently level 75, but I'm sure you get the idea. We're trying to make the most out of our low life situation, which means we're taking 8 out of 8 Dance with Death. That is a 40% increased damage, which is tripled at low life, so that is 100% increased damage. Take 3 out of 8 Survival of the Cruel, so we can get to Hollow Lich, which converts all health leech into damage and multiplies that by 10 times. 8 out of 8 Crippling Insight is a good source of intelligence and the drawback doesn't matter because we are a low life build with ward. Then 4 out of 8 Desolation for damage over time, 8 out of 8 Lasting Stench for more poison damage and duration, making it easier to stack poison. 5 out of 5 Mental Cacophony for ward retention, very important. 8 out of 8 Apocrypha, more intelligent spell damage. 1 point in 3 Plagues to get to the 5 out of 5 Contagion engine, which increases damage over time after a recent kill. Recent refers to the last 4 seconds, and we've always killed someone in the last 4 seconds with this build, so this is a permanent 100% damage over time increase. Take 10 out of 10 Decaying Form for more poison damage, 10 out of 10 Mind over Body for 20 intelligence, and all other passive points you have left you can put in either Health Leech for more damage output or more damage over time. Notice that we're not really taking any defensive nodes. This is because ward is our only defense, which makes this build very versatile and fun to play. On to skill specialization. This build uses 5 skills, each with their own purpose. Rib Blood and Transplant work in tandem, they create a very nice synergy. You also use these skills for leveling. Mark for Death and Soul Feast also work together very nicely, and Drain Life is primarily used for single target damage. Let's start with Transplant. The most important node is 3 out of 3 Dance of Blood, which makes Transplant cast 3 Rib Blood spells at the departure point. Those Rib Blood spells benefit from the Rib Blood skill tree, which is why there is a great synergy. We take 1 point in Acolyte's Fervor to reach that node. Now the core is there, we focus on more explosions and damage conversion. More explosions count as hits, meaning that you can apply damage over time ailments like bleed, poison and ignite. The more explosions, the better, so we take 1 point in Rain of Blood. 3 out of 3 Depravity and 3 out of 3 Black Mirror. So now we do 4 explosions at departure and 5 explosions at arrival. You take 1 point in Hemophilia because there is a 100% chance for 9 explosions to cause bleed. That's a guaranteed 9 bleed stacks if you transplant on top of a boss, for example, which really helps. Because we're using the Exsanguinous unique, the bleed chance on ourselves doesn't matter because we are immune to bleed at low life. Finally, you convert the damage from Transplant from physical to necrotic using 2 out of 4 Scarlet Rain to get to Ethereal Body. The reason we want this to be necrotic damage is the synergy with the unique Soulfire relic, which ignites whenever you use necrotic spells. Finally, you need 3 out of 3 Pale Blood to get some mana back whenever you cast Transplant. And Transplant itself is free because it costs health. You need mana back because especially Soul Feast is very expensive, but we will get to that. Then Rib Blood. You never cast this skill manually, but it's only a result from Transplant. Unless you're leveling, then maybe you're casting this spell. We're using both 5 out of 5 Splatter and 1 point in Eviscerate to create double blood spatters. Because Rib Blood is cast 3 times, this means 6 blood spatters, and because we spec into poison, that is 6 poison stacks. We get the poison on hit by going through 4 out of 7 Crimson Flood, increasing the area of Rib Blood. Take 1 point in Revile and then the 5 out of 5 Septic Blood, giving each blood spatter a 100% poison chance. Finally, we're also turning Rib Blood into necrotic damage for the same reason as before. So take 2 out of 4 Arcane Absorption to get the Rib Spirit, which converts all damage to necrotic. Finally, you take Arcane Fortress, which makes the Rib Blood generate ward instead of restore health. That is what we want, because we need to be on low life for all the synergy, and the more ward we get, the better. Mark for Death. Very simple skill, and you do have some versatility here. I went for 3 out of 5 Wavering Resolve, reducing necrotic protections. Then 5 out of 5 Desecration, which is a mandatory note because it increases the Mark for Death effect by so much. 4 out of 5 Long Gaze for the increased area of effect, making the spell much easier to aim. 1 point in Icy Manipulation, chilling enemies, which is a nice defensive layer. And then 2 out of 4 Imposing Will, making the chill last longer. You can opt to fear enemies too if you want. I went also for 5 out of 5 Constitution, reducing enemy poison resistance by 500 points. Soul Feast. This is a great source of ward generation, and you should use it after casting Mark for Death. We want this to generate as much ward as possible, so go to 4 out of 4 Soul Seeker for flat ward generation. Then 4 out of 4 Soul Bastion for increased percentage ward generation, and 1 point in Engorged, giving you a 10% chance to double all the ward. We go south to make the skill even more overpowered. Take 3 out of 4 Grim Affliction. This does reduce ward generation, which is bad, but it does also open the way up to a 3 out of 3 Renewed Feast. This node is the bread and butter of ward generation really, because it allows casting of Soul Feast for up to 6 times, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. You cast the same ward generating spell, that also inflicts poison by the way, up to 6 times on all enemies marked for death. The only disadvantage here is the mana cost, but that is why we have Pale Blood in Transplant to return some of that mana. Also take 3 out of 3 Sharpened Influence for mana cost reduction. Finally 2 out of 4 Poisoned Husks, adding some more poison stacks to the mix. The last skill, Life Drain, the new skill in 0.7.7, and it is such a great skill honestly, with a lot of versatility in the skill itself. I was inspired to create more builds just around this, and I might, but for now I turned Drain Life into a ward generating single target spell. While leveling, I took 3 out of 3 Thought Steal, so you can just cast this more often and not be hampered by mana so much. In my current build, these points aren't really needed anymore. Anything else is, however. Let's go bottom left first, turning Drain Life into a health cost spell. Take 4 out of 5 Empowered Drain, increasing the damage. Then 1 point in Lay Waste, another 100% increase, but no more health leech. That's great, because we need to stay low life anyway. Take Virulence, turning the damage into poison, applying a bunch of poison stacks along the way. Then Blood Pact, to make the skill cost health instead of mana. Combined with Exsanguinous, this makes this skill free, because that unique makes us immune to bleed and life leech effects. Finally, Death's Barrier provides an additional source of ward, which is great. While you're there, take Pestilent End, making enemies killed by Drain Life explode, just because you can. Drain Life at this point in time is still a channeling spell, which we don't want. So we go top right, take 2 out of 3 Ravenous, which is by now simply more damage. 2 out of 3 Insatiable, once again more health leech. Dark Shackles is up next, which is an amazing node. It turns the spell from a channeling spell into a cast spell, allowing you to instantly cast the Drain Life spell and move on with your life. The mana cost is high, but we made this skill cost life and we're immune to life leech, so the spell is still free. Take 2 out of 2 Enduring Night, increasing the length of life drain. And finally, Grasp of the Damned, which lets you target up to 10 enemies with a single drain life spell, which is great against groups in the Monolith or Arena. Let's talk about gear. The gear I'm using consists of a lot of uniques, which is another reason why this isn't a beginner friendly build. Some of the uniques can be replaced by crafted weapons, some cannot. I'll start with the mandatory uniques first. Most importantly, Exsanguinous. This unique, designed by the legend Ziggy D himself, drains life, converts it to ward, and then makes you immune to bleed at low life. Our entire build revolves around this unique, so you really need it. The Staff Plaguebearer is also very good. 225% poison on hit is no joke, especially because all the explosions from Transplant count as hits too. It does a bunch of other poison effects as well, it blinds enemies, it's a really great staff to have for this build. For any poison build, by the way. Bone Clamor Barbute, the unique helmet, is great mainly for its flat ward generation. Having this helm versus not having it is a significant difference in your base ward pool, but you could just craft something yourself here. The belt, Viper Tail, is great for poison damage as well. Soulfire we already touched on, it has a great synergy with necrotic damage, but you can craft something as well, especially with damage over time for example. Wing guards are nice, but not needed at all. The flat dodge rating is something I used quite a lot. And my other gear pieces ensure I'm glancing blow capped, because you do want that. Any other resistances you don't need to worry about, because your ward should cover all incoming damage. In terms of idols, I took all the small ward retention idols and then 2 large ornate bone idols with transplant cooldown reduction. You want a bit of that because transplant is our escape tool, your mana regen tool, and it is just great to be able to cast that a little more often. Ward retention is obviously very important to make the most out of all the ward you generate using your spells. A bit about leveling. You level using Rib Blood and Transplant. They're just really good skills. If you have Drow Sting, you can use that to apply poison at around level 20. Exsanguinous is equipable at level 23. Leveling is pretty straightforward and you can just invest the points like I described. My leveling experience was very smooth, and once you have Drain Life as a free spell that isn't channeling anymore, the build really starts to pop. Until that time, just use Transplant and Rib Blood combined, make use of all the low life synergy and enjoy the campaign. Finally, the playstyle during endgame. Here's the build in action. Bigger groups you mark for death and then you Soul Feast. It generates a ton of ward that way, which is your main form of defense. After you've cast this combo, make sure you use Transplant to get mana back. Transplant itself does also very decent bleed damage, and strong single target enemies can just be jumped on with Transplant, applying 9 stacks of bleed. The Drain Life skill is a point and click skill while you're walking around, applying necrotic damage and generating ward over time, and is really good against single targets. You can also cast multiple Drain Life spells in the same region, stacking the effect. The skill doesn't have a cooldown either, so it's just kiting and casting this, and it works really well. The build takes a while to get used to, but once you have all the combinations down, you will be moving through the levels very smoothly without encountering any issues. It is a very versatile build, and I haven't really encountered any problematic situations apart from, let's say, wave 200 plus in the arena. But that just takes practice, because you can get a lot of ward, especially in the arena with all the enemies being grouped up. You just need to find the correct walking routes to avoid their damage. For now, I hope you had fun with the build, and I also hope the guide was useful. Thanks for watching and making it to the end. Follow me on Twitter at Thyworm for more news, and I see you all soon. Bye bye.